Hi, I'm Bob, and I'm an alcoholic. More specifically, I'm Bob Reese, and I'm a professor of psychology, and I've been in recovery since 1991. I'm also on the research team of the International Quit and Recovery Registry. It's better known as the IQRR. You can see my recovery story near the bottom of the homepage of the IQRR website at quitandrecovery.org or on my personal website, drbobreese.com. My research interests are focused on the positive psychology elements of recovery. In other words, how to help others thrive in recovery. With that in mind, I've recreated some recovery tools videos that have been modified from the topics that I teach in my online psychology courses and that I have outlined in my book, The 13th Step Thriving in Recovery. Enjoy. What we're going to be examining in this Recovery Tools video is a look at your signature strengths, or the real you. The signature strengths have been developed uh, scientifically, and you can find a survey to find out what your signature strengths are at the viacharacter.org website. Now, you can go to that website now. You can pause this, go to that website, and take the VIA survey. It's free. Or you can go through this video and then go there and uh, take the survey. So there's a total of 24 strengths, and the top 5 are the ones that are going to be titled your signature strengths. They're the ones that help you perform really well in the world. They're the ones you use all the time, and you want to be able to strengthen them and become more aware of them and take them throughout, and improve them. Your signature strengths are also listed as character strengths, and they come from some virtues, 6 ubiquitous virtues or universal virtues. This is done by a massive research study by Chris Peterson and Martin Seligman. Seligman is known as the father of positive psychology. Peterson was one of his top students, and they spent several years putting together this book with the different character strengths and how to measure them and so forth. But what we do know is that if you focus on your character strengths, especially the top 5, it will improve your life satisfaction, it will improve your health, and it will improve your top performance. So we're going to take a quick look at the virtues, the values, talents, and strengths. And where they overlap is creates a self-awareness. And I like to think of the self-awareness as knowing who you am. Okay, uh, it's imperative for you to prosper in recovery and in life to know who you am. Now that is not correct or not proper English, but it is memorable, and that's why I use it so that my students understand it. Do you know who you am? So these 6 ubiquitous or universal virtues are wisdom, courage, humanity, transcendence, justice, and moderation. In the older uh, units, you may see this listed as temperance, but they've decided that it makes more sense to call it moderation. This is one that those of us in recovery have a particular problem with. So these are where the 24 strengths that are listed below come from. Where do these virtues originate from? Well, there's all sorts of virtues. Uh, they're cardinal virtues, theological virtues, noble virtues, and they all represent a moral excellence, a goodness, a righteousness These are things that we would call virtuous. Uh, we want our lives to conform to this moral and ethical principles and to be upright, an upright citizen, and so forth. This conformity is often referred to as congruity, and I'll touch on that near the end of this video. So, in summary, the virtues are our gifts of character. They're what's good about us. Now, I want to insert in here a little something about issues, which are not really part of that top four, but quite often people confuse their issues with virtues, especially when we are used to putting up with bad things. So, Toby Drews of GettingThemSober.com describes this as like filling up a garbage bag, where the bag stretches and stretches as we keep putting all of our problems, all of these challenges that people, the insults, and we can fall into the trap of priding ourselves that we are putting up with so much, and that's a virtue. And now, quite frankly, it's often necessary to maintain, stay in a relationship. But we keep stretching and stretching to accommodate more junk. And when we get into trouble, when we start thinking that this is a holy thing to do, and it's virtuous to let people consistently cross our boundaries. The important thing that I want you to get from this is it's not necessary to heal our virtues. We only need to heal our issues. So you need to determine if some of the things you think are virtuous about yourself are actually issues. So what are these values? What are values, I should say? Around election time, we always hear about family values and American values. There's cultural values, middle class values, Christian values. So what are these values? They're a person's principles or the standard of behavior. They're our judgment of what's important in life. So on this slide, you see a list of values on the left-hand side. These are things that are all good things to have. On the right-hand side, you see another overlapping list of values, how they tie things together. The most important one for me is right in the center, respect. Because if you don't have respect for yourself, for your spouse, your significant other, if you don't have respect for other people's humanity, then all these other values go out the window. They just become words. So you have to have respect, respect for other people's humanity. Well, maybe this will help. These are what values are not. Attitudes are not values. Attitudes are favorable or unfavorable evaluations or opinions about an object or issue. Values are more abstract ideals. Values are not traits. It's not the way we think, feel, or act in consistent ways. Values are more beliefs about desirable goals. Norms are not values, although both values and norms have an oughtness. That means you ought to do that. Norms are usually situationally shared beliefs, the way people should behave in a certain situation. Values actually cut across the situations and say, people should be polite to everyone in every occasion, as opposed to just when you're at a social function. Values and needs are not the same. Both influence how we behave because they influence our motives. Needs have a biological connotation, thirst, hunger, sex, and so on. Values are more socially acceptable ways of speaking about or articulating those needs. Next, we're going to take a look at the difference between talents and strengths. So think of talents as nature. Okay, it's something you're born with. Now, your talent can be improved, certainly with practice and work, or it can be totally wasted. It has it's non-moral, and you either have it or you don't. And we all know people that have talents for certain things. Look at athletes, musicians, people have a talent for math or science. Some people have a talent for English. Uh, Now, your strengths, on the other hand, are nurture. That is, they are enhanced by the environment. They can be built, they can be totally acquired, they can have moral uh, traits attached to them. And then our choice is to when to use them and when to keep building them. Einstein famously said, I have no special talents, I'm only passionately curious. So we're going to talk now about the character strengths and get to your signature strengths. And the question comes up, are character strengths always used for good? And of course, the answer is no, it's false. Uh, you look at somebody like Adolf Hitler, he certainly had the character strength of leadership, but he carried that out in a fashion that we looked at as abhorrent. You have the 9/11 hijackers. Are they brave? Well, certainly not from our cultural standpoint. However, from if you're a radical Islamic religious nut, then you look at them as brave heroes. So a lot of these things come from the culture. Uh, there's a comedian, Andrew Dice Clay, seems to be making a comeback. He was very big back in the 80s and 90s. Uh, and his humor was based on putting people down, especially women. Very misogynistic, very sexist, uh, and belittle people. So humor, while it can be a character strength, can be used not for good. Let's look at the character strengths and break them down uh, under each of the virtues that they come. So under wisdom, or wisdom and knowledge, you have cognitive strengths, positive traits related to gaining and using information in the service of having a good life. So they're creativity, curiosity, judgment, love of learning, and perspective. Strength of courage are those strengths that help you exercise your will to accomplish goals in the face of opposition. They may be external or they may be internal. So under courage, we have bravery, perseverance, honesty, and zest. I love the concept of zest. I wish I had more of it. The strengths of humanity manifest themselves in our caring relationships with others. That tendency to tend and befriend, it encompasses love, kindness, and social intelligence. The strengths of justice refer broadly to more social things, the interaction between individuals and the group and the community. An interesting part of this is that as a group shrinks, as it gets smaller, the strengths of justice seem to converge with the strengths of humanity. So the strengths of justice are teamwork, fairness, and leadership. Now, in the original or the earlier versions of the VIA, the strength of teamwork was referred to as citizenship. But now they've changed that because teamwork seems more ubiquitous. And we have the strengths of moderation or temperance. In the earlier iterations of the signatures or the character strengths, it was referred to as temperance. They've recently relabeled it as moderation because more people understand what that means. Now, this particular group, moderation, includes self-regulation, which is usually a particular problem for those of us in recovery. It also has forgiveness, humility, and prudence or cautiousness. So none of these particularly usually score well for those of us in recovery. I know none of them do for me. The strengths of transcendence allow us to move out into the larger universe and establish connections and help us to provide for a meaningful life. They do reach outside of us. Okay, so within transcendence, we have appreciation of beauty and excellence, hope, humor, spirituality, and gratitude. Now, this is an area that those of us in recovery seem to work at. So take the survey at the VIA Institute of Character and identify your signature strengths, your top 5 strengths. You should feel about those strengths, this list of things, that you own them, that it's authentic for you, it's real. You don't have to fake it. You usually will feel excited when you're using that strength. You don't have to learn much because you know how to do this. One thing you should work on, perhaps, is learning new ways to use that strength. There's a sense of yearning, a feeling of availability. There's invigoration versus exhaustion when you use it, and there's an intrinsic motivation to use it. All of these things build toward helping you know who you am. Perhaps the best way for you to see how this works for you is to take a look at my signature strengths. So my number 1 strength is curiosity. I'm a curious fellow. I like to know what's going on. I like to know why things work. My next strength is gratitude, and I live my life in gratitude. I was curious as to why gratitude wasn't number 1, but that just answered itself. And so hopefully you smiled and you got that. My next is open-mindedness. This is probably why I'm drawn towards psychology. I like to keep an open mind. I look at things from all sides. I am comfortable with ambiguity. Things don't have to be black and white. I see a lot of gray. Okay. The next is hope, and I do have hope for things in the world. And while I can get quite pessimistic or depressed about things that are going on in politics or in the world, I do have hope that we can overcome it. I work to I use the environmental motto of think globally, act locally. So, for example, I know that I can't solve world hunger, but I can make sure that I don't waste food at home. Um, I may not solve the problem of pollution, but I can uh, recycle things at home. And then there's teamwork, which I'm very good at. It could come from my years of working on teams and with teams. Uh, but people love for me to be on their team because I work with them. I don't try to take over. I'm not bossy, and uh, I do at least my share of the work, if not more. Now, I throw in my social intelligence. That's a sixth. I know that signature strengths are only the top five, but it's almost a coin flip with teamwork. Uh, I am one of those individuals that's fortunate enough I can walk into a room and I can tell who the power brokers are. I can tell who the people who are going to be trouble are. And so this is a skill, a strength that I use quite often in the world. Now, the other thing that you can do with these strengths is now remember these are all strengths, even if they show up way down the line. So for me, uh, forgiveness was a problem. Okay, I knew I had a problem with forgiveness, and so I've done a lot of research uh, on forgiveness and working at forgiveness, and I'll probably have uh, a recovery tool video on forgiveness later on. Uh, but I've had trouble forgiving people that have done things wrong to me, and I go by my uh, uh, thing. It's not seeking revenge. That's enough. More on that later. Now, the other one that most people in recovery have a problem with is self-regulation, and that's our impulse control and our appetites and so forth. So this is one you may need to focus on to work at. That's not a signature strength. Now the idea is that you take these top five and you continue to work on them. Think of a great athlete like a Serena Williams. Okay, she's got a great serve. Okay, and once upon a time she was struggling with her backhand. So she focused a lot of effort on improving her backhand, uh, but she didn't quit working on her serve. So that's the thing that you've got to do. You can work on these other areas, but don't quit working on these top five. They're what gets you by in the world. They're what makes you successful in recovery. They're what makes you successful in life, in relationships, and so forth. So one way to strengthen your strengths is to take a signature strength and try to use it a new way every day for a week. Okay? Try to use it in a way that you don't normally use it. And there's a list of suggestions that can be uh, found at this workmad.co.uk. And if you need suggestions on how to do it. Uh, so all of this will help you better know who you am. Having integrity is incredibly important to remaining in recovery. Okay. Now I mentioned the term congruency earlier. Uh, that's a state of consistency between your goals, your values, your attitudes, your actions, your behavior. You've got to be congruent. Uh, Integrity is congruence between what you know, what you profess, and what you do. That's your integrity. And without integrity, you're not going to be able to stay in recovery. And as the little poster below says, no matter how educated, talented, rich, or cool you believe you are, how you treat people ultimately tells all. Integrity is everything. And you can't be congruent, you can't have integrity unless you know who you am. So that concludes this Recovery Tools video, a signature strengths for recovery. Know that there's more on this in my book, The 13th Step, Thriving in Recovery, and we want you to please continue to go to quitandrecovery.org, take the IQRR assessments, helping us help others, and you can become a recovery hero by doing that. So until the next time, enjoy.